At shift change, the corridor breathes out heat and ash. Orderly Vex moves along the chain-hung brass sensors with practiced efficiency, tamping coals and touching striker to wick. Each vessel holds yesterday's residue, cremation ash from failed surgeries, bone dust from severed limbs, the sifted remains of quarantine victims who never left their isolation cells. The gray powder catches flame and releases its bitter sweetness into the air, mingling with the iron tang that rises from surgical runoff. Drains where blood sluices toward clogged grates. This is the scent of Imperial mercy. Medicae Auxiliary Darandi 7. Sigma operates as a processing facility, not a healing center. Here, flesh arrives, stripped of identity. Utility is calculated, extracted, redirected. Pain serves as tool, gauge, and tithe. The vast corridors echo with the machinery of conversion, human suffering transformed into resources for the Emperor's war machine. The hierarchy moves with ritual precision. Tech priest biologist Thane oversees. Resource allocation from his augmetic throne, servo skulls recording every recoverable gram, while Binharik Kant hums through vox grills. Sisters Hospitaller patrol the wards, dispensing prayers and penance in equal measure, their white robes bearing indelible stains that no washing can remove. Munitorum chirurgeons work the surgical theaters with battlefield efficiency, their hands steady from years where speed matters more than comfort. At the intake desk sits matron Kyria, her augmetic eye never sleeping, ink-stained fingers turning pages. Chained to the scarred plasteel surface by sanctified iron lies the red litanies. Ledger. Its leather binding, worn smooth by countless hands, conceals contents no orderly may examine. The pages rasp like dry leaves when turned, filled with numbers that extend beyond patient records, weights, measurements, quotas that must be met. The triage system operates with brutal clarity. White seals indicate immediate processing for those who serve the war effort. Gray seals mean delay, observation, reconsideration based on fluctuating resource availability. Black seals require no explanation. Vex has wheeled enough black-tagged patients to the mortuaria wing to understand their final destination. The wax bears incense scent to discourage flies. Imperial edicts, bolted at eye level throughout the facility, declare policy in ecclesiarchy script. Anesthetic. Waste is a sin against utility. Pain purifies. Violators will be denied rations. Smaller administratum notices specify that morphia units require confession signatures, double counted against ward allotment. Pain suppressants remained locked in sanctified containers, dispensed only after proper penance. Vex pockets his striker and moves past the sealed mortuaria door. Wax dripped, patient to be opened during later shifts. The intake halls await beyond reinforced barriers marked with fresh purity seals, arranged in ritual lattice patterns. Trolleys line. The antechamber walls. A habfaller with splinted arms. A riveter whose lungs sound like tearing paper. A child wrapped in brown-stained bandages. From behind the sealed doors, screams punctuate the mechanical hum, not pleas, but cycles. The sounds of Imperial mercy beginning its daily work of sorting human material into categories of usefulness. Vex approaches the threshold where the processing begins. Dawn brings catechism before scalpels. In the ward chapel, Sister Preceptor Mael leads the assembled staff through sacred recitation. Her voice echoes off stained plasteel walls. The body is the Emperor's instrument. We are granted the loan of it. Return it sharpened, or return it as fuel. The response comes weary but uniform. For him we live. For him we die. For him our flesh is rendered. This establishes the hierarchy of care. Bodies belong to the Emperor, not individuals. Pain purifies the soul and prepares it for service. Healing serves the war effort, never comfort. These truths guide every decision within these walls. Policy briefings follow prayer, administratum factor. Voss unrolls vellum charts detailing patient classification matrices. Service records determine priority. Militia veterans and key overseers receive white designation regardless of injury severity. Manufacturum hands with replaceable skills drift toward gray. The idle and infirm face black classification. The system pretends objectivity, but operates on pure utility calculation. Voss announces quota 17/9 without explanation, referring only to sterility compliance measured in ash tonnage. The number appears on daily reports beside bed turnover rates and blood volume reclaimed. Any shortfall triggers ration downgrades and whispered references to additional renderings when natural deaths prove insufficient. No one asks what those entail. Everyone knows the smell. The euphemism is rendering safe. Those deemed beyond recovery or beyond usefulness face sterilis orders. Level 1 involves basic sanitation and standard cremation protocols. Level 2 adds purification rites and blessed incense. Level 3 requires flame cleansing of contaminated areas. Level 4 mandates sealed containment and promethium sterilization. Level 5 remains classified, spoken softly as complete facility purification. Authorization protocols hide behind purity seals. During ward rounds, tech priest biologist Thane moves through triage with handheld auspex. The device chimes softly while servo skulls record readings. His mechadendrite stamps patient tags with symbols in quick, precise movements. A riveter with crushed fingers receives a cogtooth mark. A clerk with smoke inhalation gets branded with a skull in diamond. Their wounds bear no relation to their symbols. Vex notes the discrepancy and says nothing. The marks travel with the bodies. Matron Kyria catalogs analgesic allotments, every vial chained and countersigned. Anesthetic waste is dereliction, she recites. From policy framed as homily. Confession precedes mercy. Pain precedes grace. The red litany's ledger glows oily beside her elbow. Line items not names, but tallies. Drips expended, liters reclaimed, ash accrued. The morning closes with stamps, seals, and approvals. Paperwork makes doctrine real. Behind the Voxhorn's static, the intake doors wait beneath fresh purity seals. The auspex glyphs burn through gauze, marking flesh for purposes beyond healing. Vex files the day's grid and returns to corridors where Imperial mercy begins its systematic work. The triage chamber operates like a sorting facility for human cargo. By third bell, the rhythm becomes mechanical. Identify, classify, allocate. Air tastes of disinfectant and iron, while lumen strips flicker in rationed cycles. Vex moves between stations with wax seals warm from his palm, white, gray, black. The mathematics prove brutally simple. Utility determines destination, not medical need. Factory Supervisor Caney arrives with crushed ribs and a collapsed lung, his uniform bearing production badges from 20 cycles of quota fulfillment. Beside him, laborer Grix displays identical injuries from the same conveyor accident. Both men gasp through punctured lungs, both leak blood at matching rates. The auspex readings show equivalent trauma. Caney receives a white seal and immediate surgical preparation. A respirator blooms across his mouth while morphia follows after quick confession. Grix gets stamped black at Matron Kyria's nod. Final comfort? Sister Mael murmurs, tracing the Aquila while his eyes fix on ceiling grids he will never see again. Service records justify resource expenditure. Replaceable status makes repair inefficient. The red litany's ledger lies open under Kyria's ink-streaked hand. Vex reads the categories as he passes. Transfusible units, by type. Bone marrow yield, estimated kilograms. Unconfessed deaths, flagged for penitential. Surcharge. Crematory ash yield, kilograms by ward. A column notes, deviation versus quota, 17/9 in numbers that tighten jaws. Every entry transforms suffering into accountancy, mortality into production metrics. Efficiency maximizes throughput. Beds stack 3 high against walls, their occupants breathing steam and dust. Water rations restrict cleaning to surgeons only. Orderlies work with blood-stained hands, while tech priest biologist Thane conserves precious aqua for sterile procedures. Litanies time surgical procedures through vox speakers. Cut on 4, clamp on 8. The chanting masks screams while sanctifying the work. In shadowed alcoves, whispered transactions occur. A junior orderly tilts some ether toward a trembling habwife's mask. Industrial solvent repurposed as black market anesthetic. The vapor burns sickly sweet, illegal but merciful. Vex closes his palm over the boy's wrist. Do you want the ledger to eat her twice? The bottle vanishes. Rules reassert. Mercy exists but cannot be seen. 2 black-tagged stretchers disappear through the sealed mortuaria door. Wax sigils bead down hinges while cogtooth seals overlay aquilus. From beyond comes only steady machinery hum, muffled by bulkheads. Records mark transfers. Names become numbers. Numbers become mass. Whatever processing occurs within requires absolute secrecy. Emergency klaxons shatter the chamber's rhythm. Voxcasters crackle. Mass casualty. Event. Manufacturum district tertius. Boiler rupture. Promethium and flesh mixed. Expect severe burns, crush injuries. Multiple critical inbound. Administratum clerks roll out extra classification chits while Thane's auspex churs with accelerated assessments. Maintain quota 17/9, factor Voss orders, as if fire obeys arithmetic. Sterilus orders packets appear on clipboards like storm clouds gathering. Through reinforced viewing ports, emergency transports approach through industrial smog. The facility's quota constraints face sudden pressure. Too many bodies arriving simultaneously for standard processing rates. The mathematics of suffering must accommodate this surge while maintaining institutional compliance. Vex tightens gurney straps and glances toward the mortuaria seal. The quiet door awaits whatever adjustments prove necessary. Augmetics. Theater 2 reeks of sanctified oil and ozone. Conveyor tech Heron lies sedated on the surgical slab, his mangled forearm terminating in cauterized bone. Tech priest biologist Thane hovers above on mechadendrite limbs, servo skulls projecting measurement grids across exposed flesh. What appears as imperial mercy reveals calculated investment. Damaged workers converted into productive assets. Selection criteria extend beyond medical necessity. Thane's auspex measures bone density, neural conductivity, and psychological compliance markers. Service records determine priority. Reliable workers under 40 with clean productivity logs receive augmetic consideration. Age matters. Decades of enhanced output justify the expense. Heron's 15-year conveyor record and double-shift volunteering secure his qualification. Others with identical injuries receive black seals instead. Vex observes the preparation rituals through reinforced viewing ports. Hair removal extends beyond the surgical site. Scalp, chest, and limbs shaved for electrode placement. Neural mapping sessions stretch across days while Thane's mechadendrites probe cortical pathways. Compatibility assessment, the Binharic Kant translates. Chemical conditioning follows. Controlled doses of synthetic hormones to enhance neural plasticity and reduce psychological resistance to augmentation. The surgery transforms more than flesh. Heron's new limb whirs with servo motors and pressure sensors, but installation includes subcutaneous monitoring nodes throughout his torso. These transmit productivity data, work rate, rest periods, stress indicators, directly to mechanicus cogitators. The augmetic becomes surveillance apparatus as much as replacement limb. Post-surgical documentation reveals the true transaction. Heron's medical chart now bears the cog-tooth seal of Mars, indicating ownership transfer. His enhanced productivity becomes tithe, calculated against the augmetic's cost and amortized over projected service years. Missed shifts trigger ration penalties. Exceptional output earns devotional upgrades financed as additional debt. Bodies become assets. Repairs become contracts. Vex notices disturbing patterns in patient records. Augmetic recipients disappear from ward rosters after cognitive adjustment sessions. Surgical procedures involving neural implants and behavioral modification. Their files bear transfer stamps reading "Biology's custody, indefinite." When families inquire, clerks cite specialized recovery requirements and redirect questions to sealed Mechanicus archives. The blood tithe operates parallel to augmetic procedures. Vex observes systematic collection, plasma separators humming beside surgical tables, servo skulls cataloging blood types and genetic markers. Crimson fluid flows through blessed tubing toward refrigeration units marked with off-world shipping codes. Manifests read Apothecary Prime, Segmentum Solar, and Fleet Medicae, Battlegroup Tertius. Local suffering feeds Imperial war machinery across the galaxy. In secured corridors, Vex glimpses cognitive adjustment chambers through reinforced glass. Patients lie with opened skulls, while Thane's mechadendrites install neural implants with surgical precision. The procedures enhance compliance and reduce problematic emotional attachments. Recipients emerge with flattened personalities and mechanical obedience, perfect servants for Mechanicus facilities. Heron vanishes on his 7th day, wheeled toward the sealed biologist wing during night shift. His bed receives new occupants by morning, while his records disappear into classified archives. The investment continues elsewhere, in facilities beyond Vex's clearance. The augmetic program extracts more than damaged flesh. It harvests souls. Scarcity breeds commerce in shadows. Beyond the Medicae facility's armored gates, the Underhive constructs its own economy from desperation and coin. Makeshift surgical stalls line blast-scarred corridors, their operators working with stolen sutures and bent needles. Black market chirurgeons dose patients with sump ether siphoned from machine pits. Their success rates dismal, but their services necessary for those denied imperial care. The currency takes peculiar forms. Ash scrip circulates among grieving families. Cream paper certificates stamped in red wax, purchased from Shrine Bureau offices. Each slip promises priority cremation and a name spoken during censor rites. Parents clutch these documents like relics, believing proper incineration ensures souls reach the Emperor's light. The reality proves different. Bodies disappear into mass processing regardless of payment, but hope demands its price. Red criers emerge during shift changes, their crimson robes stained from handling contaminated ash. These hooded figures purchase pathogen-laden crematory residue at premium rates, loading sealed containers onto wheeled carts before vanishing into Underhive warrens. They pay in untraceable scrip and speak of sanctified fumigation or neutralization rites. Vex once observed a red crier pay triple for ash from quarantine victims, a transaction that chilled him more than any Black Seal. Within the facility, doctrine remains unyielding. Vex witnesses Sister Novice Kell attempting to administer morphia to a child with infected burns. Sister Hospitaller Mael intercepts the vial with augmetic reflexes, her voice carrying no malice, only certainty. Confession precedes mercy, she recites, seizing the precious analgesic. Pain purifies the soul, sedation dulls spiritual awareness. The morphia disappears into sanctified storage while the child's screams echo through ward corridors. Moral compromises multiply like infection. Orderlies accept coins to extend family visits beyond regulation time. Blood cellars congregate outside intake doors, their veins scarred from repeated punctures, faces hollow with anemia. They offer plasma in exchange for treatment priority, a desperate gamble against the triage matrix. The facility's collection quotas create perverse incentives where families literally bleed themselves for medical access. Sump ether flows through hidden networks as illicit mercy. Industrial solvent repurposed as anesthetic provides temporary relief from sanctioned suffering. Its toxic vapors taste like machine runoff and stale sugar, causing liver damage but quieting screams long enough for crude procedures. Families choose poisoning over conscious agony, administering the substance in shadowed corners where official eyes cannot see. The shadow economy operates in careful symbiosis with official channels. Even black market cremations contribute to facility quotas, creating grim interdependence between sanctioned and illicit operations. Underground surgeons use stolen diagnostic equipment while families mortgage everything for procedures the Medicide denies, amputations without proper anesthetic, organ repairs using scavenged materials. By dusk, rumors spread faster than stretchers. Doc Vox chatter filters through orderly quarters. A plague ship requesting emergency berth, its crew fevered and desperate, quarantine pennants raised against the void. Port Authority debates permission while the vessel's distress signals grow increasingly urgent. Contamination sensors spike across facility networks as emergency protocols activate. The sensor smoke smells stronger tonight, ash, and something wet beneath it. Inspection arrives with scales and suspicion. Administratum auditors in ash-gray tabards spread through corridors like accountants of the dead, their portable weighing equipment clicking against plasteel. Floors. They measure crematory output by ward, scraping residue from furnace lips and comparing tonnage against admission records stamped with purity seals. Each gram matters. Shortfalls suggest theft or inefficiency, while excess implies unauthorized processing. At the intake desk, Matron Kyria opens the Red Litany's ledger for examination. Its oil-stained pages reveal marginalia that transforms doctrine into mathematics. Souls rendered safe equals kilograms secured. Blood collection becomes fluid recovery, 112 liters, grade A prime. Organ harvesting reads as salvageable components, 89% efficiency rating. Human suffering reduces to inventory management through careful notation. Mortality balanced against production quotas with bureaucratic precision. Ordo sepulturum. Agents hover like undertakers at a birth, their bone-white gloves and slate faces scanning for blasphemous resilience. Patients who survive beyond statistical projections. Agent Kane's augmetic eye cross-references recovery rates against mortality curves, flagging anomalies for investigation. Those who heal too quickly face scrutiny. Those who endure too long become suspicious. The Imperium tolerates neither miracles nor stubborn flesh that defies ordained death. Vex discovers internal memoranda during the inspection chaos, documents threatening immediate ration downgrades if quota 17/9 falls short. Current projections show dangerous shortfalls. Natural deaths prove insufficient for mandated ash tonnage. Unsigned orders instruct night shift to consider additional renderings where numbers lag. The mathematics demand compliance whether patients cooperate or not. Emergency Vox chatter interrupts the audit as the plague ship receives docking permission. Fevered crew members stagger through airlocks, their skin mottled with geometric patterns, while blood weeps from pores in crystalline formations. They breathe like grinding metal, temperatures spiking beyond human tolerance. The smell hits immediately, sweet-sour fungal decay that clings to throat and lungs. Facility response protocols activate with mechanical precision. Blast doors seal contaminated sections while air scrubbers engage emergency filtration. Sisters hospitalers switch from healing prayers to purification rites. their voices rising in harmonized litanies designed to cleanse spiritual corruption alongside biological threats. Promethium reserves receive blessing, while flame projector crews don hazmat suits blessed with sacred oils. Tech priest biologists. Thane's auspexes spike dangerously as contaminated patients enter triage. The unknown pathogen exhibits disturbing properties, rapid mutation rates, resistance to standard antibiotics, and apparent intelligence in targeting specific organ systems. His mechadendrites withdraw samples while servoskulls record data for immediate transmission to Mars. This outbreak exceeds local containment capabilities. The three-toll alarm echoes through facility. Corridors, suspected contagion requiring immediate response. Vex watches Mechanicus auspexes spike beyond safe parameters, their machine spirits screaming warnings about pathogenic threats that defy classification. Emergency lighting bathes everything in crimson while containment protocols escalate toward their ultimate conclusion. The audit scales still hold yesterday's ash, but tomorrow's tonnage may exceed all previous quotas. The outbreak blooms like malignant scripture across the intake halls. Dock workers stagger through airlocks, coughing dark, spore-laden blood that spatters walls in geometric patterns, crystalline formations that pulse with alien intelligence. Their flesh erupts with fungal growths, while temperatures spike beyond human tolerance, skin mottled into weeping tapestries of infection. Tech priest biologists. Thane's auspexes shriek warnings as contamination spreads exponentially, the pathogen exhibiting genetic material that defies classification, part viral, part fungal, apparently intelligent in targeting specific organ systems. The machine spirits detect resilience that bypasses every standard countermeasure, while sweet-sour decay mingles with the facility's metallic tang. Ordo Sepulturum. Agent Caney surveys the escalating chaos through augmetic eyes that calculate contamination vectors in real time. With decisive precision, he snaps a crimson purity seal and raises his voxcaster. Sterilis order. Level 5. Authorized. Execute full purification protocols. Emperor, preserve us all. The words trigger facility-wide mechanisms that transform mercy into fire. Blast doors slamming shut with hydraulic finality, sealing contaminated sections while emergency lighting bathes corridors in hellish red. Sisters Hospitaller abandon healing prayers for purification rites, their voices rising in harmonized litanies designed to sanctify mass destruction. Let flame cleanse what flesh cannot endure, they chant while guiding bewildered patients toward designated exits. The three-toll alarm wails ultimate contamination as promethium sprinklers activate throughout infected wards. The blessed fuel cascades from ceiling nozzles like sanctified rain, soaking patients, staff, and equipment in flammable purification. The air shimmers with petroleum vapors and sacred oils blended for maximum cleansing efficiency. Ignition follows with systematic precision. Walls become furnaces while the facility completes its metamorphosis from healing center to crematorium. Vex witnesses the brutal calculus through reinforced viewing ports, a mother with infected burns pressing her uncontaminated child into Sister Hospitaller Machel's arms before flames reach them. Her final act, a desperate transfer of fate. Patients with treatable injuries scream as fire consumes them, their potential utility sacrificed against broader contamination. The Ordo Sepulturum's logic proves absolute. Better to cleanse than to risk. Through smoke and rising heat, institutional machinery continues functioning with mechanical devotion. Matron Kyria emerges from burning corridors, clutching the chained red litany's ledger like a sacred relic, its leather binding smoking but intact. Production quotas too valuable to lose even during apocalyptic purification. Her augmetic eye streams tears of sacred oil while she navigates toward sealed exits, already calculating ash tonnage yields against quota 17/9 requirements. Tech priests harvest even amid destruction, their mechadendrites working with surgical precision while fire consumes the halls. Servo skulls deploy through flame to extract organs from the dying, uncontaminated hearts, kidneys, neural matter, collected for processing even as donors burn. Death feeds the machine regardless of circumstances, each component entering bins stamped with destination codes, while runners navigate predetermined paths through Inferno. The smell reaches overwhelming intensity, iron, sugar, funeral smoke mixing into an atmosphere of sanctified destruction. Burnt flesh and incinerated dreams combine with sweet pathogen corruption, creating the facility's ultimate expression of ash and blood. Floor drains gurgle pink, then black, while ventilation systems struggle against smoke that carries processed humanity toward recycling centers. When flames finally die, silence settles over smoking ruins. The transformation completes. Wards to retorts, beds to processing trays, bodies to throughput measured in metric tons. Only the sealed mortuaria wing remains unburnt, its reinforced bulkheads and independent life support, preserving contents too valuable to risk even against total contamination. Fresh purity seals ring unmarked doors, while machinery hums behind armored walls, protecting secrets that survived where mercy could not. Emergency containment protocols spare these preserved materials, while administratum scales begin appearing in the ash drift aftermath. In the smoldering ruins, administratum clerks emerge like mortuary accountants in ash-gray tabards and sanctified rebreathers. Their portable scales click against charred plasteel as they weigh crematory residue by the metric ton, scooping human remains into blessed containers, while servo skulls record tonnage with mechanical precision. The air tastes of burnt bone and sanctified promethium, thick enough to coat throats, despite filtration masks blessed with purification oils. Matron Kyria spreads the smoke-stained red litany's ledger across a makeshift desk, its true purpose revealed in the aftermath's harsh clarity. The oil-dark pages transform human suffering into production accounting through careful marginalia. Souls rendered safe equals kilograms secured. Blood collection becomes fluid recovery, grade A', liters. Organ harvesting reads as salvageable components, 89% efficiency rating. Each entry converts mortality into mathematics, death into deliverable quotas measured against imperial requirements. The audit reveals dangerous shortfalls. Red ink glares from the ledger's columns. Unaccounted biomass, 612 kilograms. Promethium turned flesh to vapor, while ventilation systems carried percentage skyward, creating gaps in production accounting that threaten quota compliance. Factor Voss calculates the deficit while preparing memoranda, authorizing additional renderings to balance institutional books. Gray-tagged patients will become black through bureaucratic necessity rather than medical deterioration. Processing begins immediately, despite facility devastation. Rotary magnets clatter as they extract ferrous fragments, nail beds, suture clips, augmetic screws, into bins for smelter reclamation. Tweezers collect gold caps and molars, their enamel clicking like coins, while pathogen-laden ash receives special handling. Red criers arrive within hours, their crimson robes offering premium rates for contaminated residue they describe as sanctified fumigation grade. Their payments exceed standard rates by 300%, suggesting purposes beyond simple disposal. Bulk ash mixing occurs in reinforced chambers where lime combines with human residue to create quarantine mortar, building materials blessed for containing future outbreaks. The gray paste hardens into blocks stamped with purity seals, each containing processed humanity converted into construction resources through systematic transformation. Vex gains access to the unburnt mortuaria wing through emergency protocols, discovering the facility's hidden core. The temperature drops while air tastes of antiseptic and copper. Organ reclamation tables stretch across sterile chambers, their surfaces scarred from countless harvests. Blood fractionation equipment hums with mechanical devotion, separating plasma into components while centrifuges spin scarlet fluid like dawn from night. Labels stutter past on cogitator-driven belts. Blood tithe, biologists, subredoubt, theta. Secondary tags read apothecary distribution, fleet medicae, experimental binders, ecclesiarchy incense. Shipping crates sit bolted and blessed, their stencils listing off-world routes in tight administratum script. The revelation crystallizes with surgical clarity. Imperial hospitals function as systematic conversion facilities, transforming human suffering into useful resources for the war machine. The Red Litany's ledger tracks conversion rates against imperial requirements, balancing local mortality against off-world demands through careful accounting that turns flesh into fuel for continued imperial survival. The chapel annex breathes incense and doctrine through smoke-stained air. Sister Preceptor Mael stands before salvaged altar tables where surgical instruments gleam beside blessed candles, her voice carrying absolute certainty through corridors where screams punctuate prayer. Pain purifies the soul while anesthesia dulls spiritual awareness, she declares to bandaged patients awaiting procedures. Through agony, we commune with his eternal sacrifice. Sedation separates the faithful from divine instruction. The congregation responds with practiced resignation. For him we suffer, through him we endure, by him we are cleansed. Their voices carry knowledge learned through necessity. Resistance brings additional suffering without reducing its duration. Confession unlocks sedation through calculated mercy. In the penitential booth, Hab worker Kale recites fabricated sins with desperate precision. I coveted extra rations. I questioned production quotas. I harbored unkind thoughts during catechism. Each manufactured transgression earns morphia units recorded in spiritual ledgers. Sister Mael nods approval while preparing blessed analgesics. Pain relief purchased through self-accusation, mercy contingent upon manufactured guilt. 2 stations away, suspected heretic Jorik endures conscious amputation for identical injuries. His crime, questioning why the Emperor permits such suffering if he truly protects the faithful. No confession can cleanse doctrinal doubt, so scalpels work through flesh while he experiences every incision. His screams become instruction for waiting patients. Doubt brings agony, faith brings relief. The theology operates through demonstration rather than explanation. Scarcity transforms into doctrine through institutional necessity. When oxygen supplies run low, sisters teach counting chants that regulate breathing for burn victims. In on Sanctus, out on Imperator, hold on Terra. The rhythm conserves precious air while providing religious comfort. Prayer becoming both survival technique and resource management disguised as spiritual instruction. The revelation strikes with surgical clarity. Analgesic scarcity represents deliberate policy rather than mere shortage. Vex observes locked armories filled with morphia crates stamped with Mechanicus sigils, supplies withheld not from lack but from doctrine. Pain serves dual functions as punishment and purification, breaking resistance while providing spiritual justification for institutional brutality. Children learn to fabricate transgressions for medical mercy, lies becoming prayers in an economy of sanctified suffering. Visiting Confessor Thaddeus arrives from the Cardinal's palace to inspect post-purge spiritual conditions. His pristine robes contrast sharply with smoke-stained walls, while augmetic eyes scan reconstruction efforts. Magnificent sterility of souls, he pronounces, observing patients who accept procedures without protest. Fire has cleansed doubt along with flesh. The Emperor smiles upon such perfect submission. Through reinforced glass, blood continues flowing through blessed tubes toward the unburnt mortuaria wing. crimson streams carrying processed humanity toward biologist custody. The systematic harvest operates parallel to spiritual instruction, theology masking industrial efficiency, while confession lubricates the machinery of conversion. Sacred suffering justifies the system, while the Red Litany's ledger records its yield. Within the Mechanicus subredoubt, flesh becomes commodity through sacred machinery. Tech priest biologist Thane oversees processing from his cogitator throne, mechadendrites adjusting flow rates while servo-skulls catalog components with mechanical precision. Bodies arrive as substrates, raw materials stripped of identity and converted into imperial resources through systematic disassembly blessed by sacred oils and Binharic Kant. The reclamation operation functions like a sanctified abattoir. Organs move along conveyor belts toward grading stations where auspexes assess servitorization potential. Hearts rated alpha feed mechanical enhancement programs. Beta-grade kidneys supply transplant stockpiles. Gamma specimens enter reagent vats for pharmaceutical processing. Stampers hiss purity codes into tissue while cogitators calculate optimal distribution based on off-world requirements transmitted through astropathic channels. Bone processing occurs through enzymatic baths that strip calcium clean before industrial grinders reduce skeletons to ivory meal. The powder falls like warm snow into mixers that extrude ration bricks, stamped nutrient distribution, penitential crews. Tech acolytes explain without inflection. Recycled osseous paste sustains void workers and servitor populations while reducing resupply mass. Consumption closes the circle of imperial labor through systematic recycling. Blood fractionation represents the operation's crimson heart. Centrifuges separate plasma, platelets, and cellular components into disciplined streams flowing toward multiple destinations. Labels scroll past Vex's observation. Void ship Medicae, Segmentum Obscurus, Apothecarian Trial, Coagulant Batch 7, Ecclesiarchy Binder, Incense Grade Heraclan. The final designation notes, smells like victory over decay. Citizens will inhale the processed fallen during morning prayers and call it holiness. The Red Litanies. Ledger reveals its ultimate function through ash-stained pages tracking yield against quota 17/9. When natural deaths fall short of mandated tonnage, additional renderings occur with bureaucratic precision. Gray-tagged patients receive midnight reclassification to black status through administrative murder disguised as medical necessity. Forms bear absent supervisors' signatures, while death certificates carry predated stamps. Families learn of unexpected complications, while processing continues uninterrupted. Vats labeled servitor feedstock and protein supplement, hive bottom, reveal the scope of human recycling. Local suffering feeds broader networks through careful cataloging that treats mortality like any imperial commodity distributed according to strategic requirements. Nothing wastes. Everything serves the Emperor's grand design through systematic conversion. During routine documentation review, Vex discovers his fate among personnel adjustments. A cogitator printout lists his name beside chilling notation. Excessive empathy indicators, compromises operational efficiency. Cognitive adjustment level 3, recommended. The scheduling appears for tomorrow's shift, his usefulness requiring correction rather than termination. Empathy becomes malfunction, requiring surgical repair, through procedures that preserve utility while removing moral complications. The harvest extends beyond patients to include staff developing problematic attachments. Shipping containers wait in loading bays, their stencils listing destinations across the Imperium, while blessed seals preserve contents during void ship transport. The network operates on galactic scale, local facilities feeding the broader war machine through coordination that reduces human resources to production metrics measured in kilograms and compliance rates. The cognition theater breathes sanctified voltage through brass restraints anointed with sacred oils. Vex lies immobilized on the neural platform, while tech priest biologist Thane's mechadendrites position cranial probes with surgical precision. A parchment rests on his chest reading, "Voluntary correction for operational efficiency," his signature already inscribed in red ink from yesterday's administrative processing. Sister Mael touches his brow with blessed ash. "Be still. Be useful." The crown descends with metallic whispers. Neural spines kiss scalp while optic interfaces bloom across his eyes. Their machine spirit hum, starting in teeth and moving inward. Memory editing begins as electrical discharge targets specific engrams. Childhood warmth dissolves like sugar in acid, while connections between compassion and meaning sever through controlled voltage. Faces of suffering patients blur into indistinct shapes. Their screams lose edges until they become mere acoustic phenomena, requiring no emotional response. Emotional dampening follows like weather systems. Chemical dispensers inject synthetic compounds that suppress neurochemical pathways associated with empathy and moral distress. A pressure front rolls across his consciousness, lifting whatever used to rise there: pity, panic, rebellions of the heart. In their place, smooth surfaces that reflect orders without distorting them. The machinery reshapes neural architecture according to programmed parameters blessed by Mars protocols. Behavioral compulsions install through direct interface. When bells chime thrice, his hands will tighten gurney brakes automatically. When stumps bleed, he'll reach for tourniquets before meeting eyes. When voices plead, responses will root through catechism before language. Triggers nest under words: mercy, waste, quota. Each bound to responses that make refusal physiologically impossible. Through fragmenting awareness, revelation emerges. Most senior medics have undergone similar adjustments, their clinical detachment manufactured rather than natural. Matron Kyria's augmetic eye conceals cranial scarring from multiple procedures. Sister Preceptor Mael's perfect composure results from emotional circuits severed during novitiate training. The system maintains itself by surgically removing staff capacity for moral rebellion, creating compliant servants who perform atrocities without psychological resistance. The Imperium's approach to dissent reveals ultimate totalitarian control. Rather than executing rebels, the system converts them into willing assets through surgical personality modification. Dissidents become resources. Moral questioning transforms into productive compliance through procedures that preserve skills while eliminating troublesome conscience. Rebellion becomes literally unthinkable through neurological sabotage. Power fluctuations cascade through facility systems. Emergency generators engage, while neural programming stutters mid-installation. Warning glyphs scatter across Thane's optics as a purity seal blisters and splits. The crown's hum stumbles, catches, resumes off-key. Vex's adjustment remains incomplete. Empathy, circuits damaged but not severed. Compliance programming partial rather than absolute. He returns to duties carrying knowledge he cannot act upon, empathy he cannot express, and compliance he cannot fully resist. The incomplete adjustment creates perfect torment, awareness without agency, understanding coupled with paralysis. His badge reads, "Adjusted," while corridors smell of ash and blood, and he moves through them with manufactured calm, performing tasks he comprehends too well. The ledgers converge into revelation. Cross-reference the red litanies, entries against administratum shipping manifests, and the pattern resolves with mathematical precision. Imperial hospitals are not failing at healing. They are succeeding brilliantly at their actual design. These facilities function as systematic culling mechanisms, filtering human resources through utility matrices while converting biological waste into essential imperial materials. Statistical analysis exposes the scope through leaked Munitorum documents and Mechanicus resource tallies. Facility 77. Sigma processes approximately 47,000 citizens annually, achieving 31% survival rates for essential personnel while routing the remainder through established conversion streams. The Red Litanies. Ledger tracks this yield: 890 metric tons of bone meal for servitor nutrition, 12,400 liters of fractionated blood products for fleet Medicae, and 340 tons of crematory ash for quarantine mortar and ecclesiarchy incense binding. Quota 17/9 represents just one calculation in equations that balance human mortality against imperial survival. The economics prove inescapable. Without systematic biological harvesting, the Imperium's war machine would collapse within standard years. Void ship Medicae depend on constant blood resupply during extended campaigns, the crimson tubes flowing toward the mortuaria wing feed. Naval operations. Across segmentums, servitor populations require processed osseous paste as primary nutrition, their mechanical efficiency dependent on recycled human calcium. Even ecclesiarchy incense relies on human ash as binding agent, creating the sacred smoke that maintains spiritual compliance across a million worlds. Leaked Mechanicus cogitator files reveal galactic coordination through astropathic networks. Sub-redoubt facilities across 17 sectors operate identical processing protocols, their yields calculated against strategic requirements transmitted from Mars. Local suffering feeds broader distribution systems where individual metacell become nodes in resource networks spanning the galaxy. The blood tithe supplies apothecary trials, experimental coagulants, and battlefield transfusion stocks, while organ harvests stock servitor forges and augmetic replacement programs. The system's brutality emerges not from corruption, but from design. Pain as penance allows resource rationing to masquerade as piety, while confession as currency transforms scarce analgesics into spiritual commerce. The Mechanicus supplies processing efficiency through auspex marks that classify utility rather than medical need, cognitive adjustments that convert empathetic staff into compliant instruments, and harvest protocols that reduce names to inventory numbers. Between sacred and mechanical stands the administratum with its scales, officiating the marriage of doctrine and supply chain. Vex continues duties with his mind half reshaped, the incomplete cognitive adjustment creating perfect institutional witness. He lights morning sensors knowing their contents represent processed citizens, updates the Red Litany's ledger understanding its production accounting, and wheels patients toward the sealed mortuaria wing with full awareness of their destination. His damaged empathy circuits preserve enough consciousness to comprehend the horror while chemical compulsions force cooperation. The system creates its own chroniclers, staff who understand but cannot resist, observe but cannot intervene. The ash and blood smell represents fundamental truth about imperial existence. Individual life possesses value only as it serves the greater machine. Citizens exist as biological resources awaiting optimal processing timing rather than souls deserving protection. The pathology extends beyond individual facilities to encompass imperial civilization itself. Systematic culling maintains population balance while resource extraction sustains military operations across endless fronts through institutional mechanisms that process flesh like any strategic commodity. The machine consumes everything and calls it necessary. At shift change, the corridor breathes out heat and ash. Orderly Vex moves along the chain-hung brass sensors with practiced efficiency, tamping coals and touching striker to wick. Each vessel holds yesterday's residue, the processed remains of thousands converted into resources for imperial survival. The gray powder catches flame and releases its bitter sweetness into the air, mingling with the iron tang from surgical runoff, where blood flows toward collection points serving galactic distribution networks. This is the scent of imperial necessity. The Red Litany's ledger lies open under Matron Kyria's ink-streaked hand, its true first page finally revealed. No names appear, only categories arranged like liturgy of arithmetic. White returned, gray deferred, black rendered, ash secured, kilograms. Beneath these, conversion formulae transform individual suffering into production metrics. Souls rendered safe equals kilograms secured. Fluid recovered measured in liters. Components salvaged by percentage yield. Numbers occupy spaces where faces once resided. Survival requires procedural knowledge, learned through observation and incomplete cognitive adjustment. The sweet scent signals, promethium fire lines primed for emergency purification. Walk, do not run, toward designated exits when sensors turn cloying. Petition quietly with relics and ration chits when seeking medical attention, placing offerings beside charts rather than upon them to avoid forcing clerks into quota calculations. Confess quickly if morphia becomes necessary, fabricating sins with sufficient creativity to unlock analgesic reserves through spiritual commerce. Doubt proves expensive while manufactured guilt purchases temporary mercy. Avoid the mortuaria wing during purges when fresh wax seals protect processing operations. Even the faithful face arithmetic when quotas demand additional renderings. New patients arrive as the cycle continues. Emergency transports discharge casualties from industrial accidents while triage seals determine destinations through utility calculations rather than medical need. A shift-collapsed miner receives gray classification pending productivity assessment. A riveter coughing metal fragments gets white status due to specialized skills. A child with infected burns faces black designation, replaceable, processable, convertible. Tech priest biologists. Thane hovers over intake assessments while servo skulls record measurements for conversion protocols. Sisters hospitaler prepare purification rites alongside surgical instruments, their dual function encompassing both healing and rendering through institutional design. The administratum scales weight in alcoves, ready to weigh whatever remains, after procedures complete their systematic work of transforming flesh into fuel. Vex pockets his striker and approaches the threshold where processing begins another day. His incomplete adjustment preserves enough awareness to comprehend the horror, while chemical compulsions ensure cooperation through neurological sabotage, disguised as spiritual correction. The machine creates its own chroniclers, staff who understand but cannot resist, observe but cannot intervene. He lights the final sensor, smoke rising through ventilation systems toward shrine chambers where citizens inhale their predecessors while calling it holiness. The incense carries processed remains of yesterday's suffering into tomorrow's prayers. The smell of ash and blood endures, eternal and necessary. Fundamental truth of imperial existence where individual life possesses value only as it serves the greater machine. The sensors burn. The ledger opens. The cycle continues.